Good morning, everyone. This is Beth Worsdell, and it's a beautiful Thursday. Firstly, I wanted to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for every share of my videos. You're making a massive difference, so please keep sharing. This will be video 4 for chapter 4 for Earth's Angels, sci-fi fantasy fiction. As some of you have already probably seen, I've had some wonderful 5-star Amazon reviews, and the great thing is that I know 2 of them that I received recently were from fans of werewolves, vampires and demons, and they thoroughly enjoyed my book. So it just goes to show that it's actually connecting with so many different people who normally read lots of different genres. So that is brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And one thing that does keep popping up is that it's like a magical avatar. You know, the film Avatar. It's like a magical version, which is quite nice. Obviously, these are angels and not that type of alien, but massive compliment. Now, I'm sorry I sound so gruff, but hay fever is kicking my arse at the moment. It really is. And unfortunately, I forgot to take my antihistamine last night, so I woke up this morning just full of it. So anyway, getting back to chapter 4, as I said, please share the others and this video, because it is very helpful. Now, chapter 4 is when you see the real magical side of Earth's Angels. So keep listening. Okay. Oh, by the way, I'm outside, just so you can hear running water and maybe the odd dog barking. Before long, we arrived at another massive archway, which was much bigger and grander than the entrance to my room and the other archways we'd passed. There seemed to be more symbols on this one too than the archways I'd seen so far. The extra symbols made the archway look a lot more important and impressive. Harrick led the way in, and I followed with Zanika at the rear. As we entered, there was a humming sound, not loud, just a soft collection of sounds blended together. The room was a large half-circle shape, and it was also very wide and full of angels. The front wall ahead of us was made completely of glass, glistening exactly like the wall of the encapsulated animals in the birthing room. Through the glass I could see the ocean waves crashing against waves and flashes of white tips. There, among the turbulent waves, were more of the white rig-type structures. I couldn't count how many there were. There were rig structures miles away in the distance, but some were closer, and I could see the seawater flowing in and out of them. It was an amazing sight. "Please follow us," Zanika said as we began to move through the bustling room. There were curved, shaped consoles everywhere, so many buttons and dials flashing in all directions. All the consoles were facing the huge glass window. The consoles were all occupied by male and female angels, all with the beautiful green shimmer to their hair and wings down their back. They were all very busy, but everyone that I looked at had the same look of peaceful contentment on their faces. They obviously loved what they did. None of them seemed to notice us as we went by. All were clearly focused on their jobs. Zanika and Harrick led me through large glass doors to a side room. It was spacious and bright inside, with a small table in the middle and the same style comfy chairs as in my room, 3 of which were occupied by more angels. They were all female, with silvery red hair and wings, and all had kind, calm faces. As we entered the room, all 3 smiled at me and dipped their heads, and then they raised their hands to their throats, making them glow white. Lowering their hands back down, the angel in the centre spoke. "Welcome, Alita. Please join us and sit. We would like to talk with you," she said kindly. I think that dog's talking to me. She had the same soft musical voice as Anika and Hula's. My name is Christique. This is Livik and Jackie's, she stated. She raised her arm to indicate who was who, and all three had the same kind of aura as those I'd already met, which was peaceful and kind. The three of us took seats in the chairs, and I looked into the sparkling blue peacock eyes of Christique. Thank you for taking such good care of me, I told her, hoping she could hear my gratitude. She gave me such a look of warm affection as she smiled at me that I felt an instant connection with her, and it warmed my heart. I asked Harik and Zanika to introduce me to you, Alita, as you are the only human woman to wake in all the years we have been here, she said softly. The men and children in our holding structures only socialise with each other. We do not have any contact with them other than delivering supplies every day and seeing to their medical needs, she explained. Excuse me. The look on my face must have reflected my utter disappointment because Christique suddenly looked concerned for me. Do not worry, Alita, she said. We do that so they may bond as a community without any interference. We do explain to them that we are here only to help when they arrive at our holding structures. I felt a little relief flow through me at her statement, but in my heart I felt a great sense of loss with no understanding why. It was so confusing. I needed to remember who I was, and I couldn't imagine myself being alone with no loved ones. I must have at least a mother and a father or some relatives wondering where I was. Let us show you something, Alita, Livik said. With that, she lifted her arm with her palm facing outwards towards the middle of the table. Instantly, in front of us was an image of Earth turning slowly. It was a sharp image like a TV screen, but more like a hologram hovering above the table, and I was mesmerised by the sight. Your Earth was dying when we arrived, Christique stated. We arrived just in time, I think. Your oceans were dead, your fresh water was no longer pure and drinkable, and your animal kingdom was virtually extinct. She had such a sad look on her face as she spoke, which didn't brighten as she continued. Your fellow humans were also dying from disease, starvation, thirst, and from killing each other over what few resources were left. Alita, your race was on the edge of extinction. I was stunned at the severity of what she was telling me, but also the heartbreaking sadness in her tone and body language. As she was describing the scene they had encountered, the images changed before us, showing me just how horrific the status of the planet had been. First, the image was of the sea. It was a dirty brown colour and was thick with lifeless, rotting fish, with whale carcasses and birds floating on the top. The water was thick with slime which turned my stomach. I am sorry about that dog. It's not mine. Next were images of rivers and streams. The water was a darker brown which didn't flow properly. It looked thick and slimy with an occasional dead, rotting fish moving in the slow flow of sludge. The vegetation on either side of the rivers and streams was brown and dead, limp in the hard, dry soil. I could feel tears welling up in my eyes and a lump forming in my throat as I witnessed the reality of their words. Then the images changed again, showing cities and towns, none of which I recognised. The picture zoomed in, displaying people of all races and colours dying in their homes and many in the streets. Were they trying to escape? Or were their instincts telling them to run for help? I thought. Women and children were lying helpless on the ground, racked with terrible diseases. Their bodies were showing their illness and starvation. Others were dying from injuries due to fighting. They had horrendous open gunshot wounds and massive gashes due to knives or God knows what. By this time, tears were streaming down my face. I couldn't stop myself from sobbing at the sights I was witnessing. No wonder they came to help us. I looked into my host's eyes, and they all looked back at me with such great sadness. There was no anger, frustration, or judgment in their sparkling blue eyes about what we had done to our planet, our Earth. Just an utter sadness. Jackie's continued the explanation. Because humans were fighting over the last of your resources, we had to act fast to try and save as many of you as possible, she said. We decided that the safest and quickest way for you all was to make you all sleep, she explained. Again, the image changed to show what must have been their spacecraft, flying from space and through our atmosphere. All were going in different directions, and then some stopped over major cities. I assumed their crafts were all over the world, and as the images were changing from one... I assumed their crafts were all over the world, as their images were changing from one landscape to another. Some places looked dry and hot, with the population spread out in hut-like houses. Others were in built-up cities with larger, older town houses, where there were lots of snow and ice. Some places looked a little familiar to me, but I couldn't tell you where they were. There seemed to be different types of spacecrafts of various shapes, colours and sizes, which I thought was very strange. However, my logical mind thought that maybe it's like us humans and our cars. We have different types of cars, trucks, tanks for different functions. Livett closed her hand and opened it again, making the image instantly dissolve and then reappear. This time I was watching other spacecrafts moving to different locations. They landed next to massive rivers and in mountain areas next to lakes. Some were landing in oceans while others landed in dry, dead fields and prairies. I noticed that the crafts landing in the oceans or next to the rivers were the white rig-shaped spacecrafts that I'd seen out of the windows. The next images were of a large town with old-fashioned cobblestone roads. It was lined with black and white old-style houses, and the people were falling to the ground. It looked like a pulse of some kind of light emanating from the spacecraft, which was hovering above the town. As the light hit the earth, the people fell to the ground. It wasn't a fast faint, but more of a slow motion fall to the floor. There was no violence in the action. It was just the same as feathers falling to the floor. As you can see, Alita, we do not mean harm to your race, Christine said with her lovely soft smile. Zanika placed her hand on mine, and I felt calmness spread throughout my body. I was grateful to her for helping calm my emotions. I could see from what they were showing me that they weren't a threat to us. Next were images of the angels appearing on the ground in the city. There were more angels than I could count. They were finding a human and then using their power to elevate them off the floor, then abruptly disappear in a white flash of light. The image changed again, and as I watched, the angels reappeared in one of their ships. The angels moved the elevated sleeping humans into large hospital-looking rooms. The rooms were draped with the same sheer veils like the veils in the birthing room, and they laid the people gently on the beds. There were rows and rows of adults and children. Fascinated, I watched as angels with the same blue colour hair as Harrick and Zanika cleaned one of the children, who looked about 10 years old. They were seeing to the female child's wounds, using their power to heal her, and then putting an IV-looking device into her arm. My heart ached in my chest as I took in the horrific state of the child. She was skin and bone, with her eyes sunk into her once beautiful little face. Her curly black hair was matted with dirt, and her cheekbones were far too pronounced in her small face. I bet I could have counted every little rib in her tiny little frame. I could see that she had been starving and was severely dehydrated. I thought I could see sores around her mouth and on her small hands and down her shins just below the hem of her filthy blue shorts. The image changed again, showing the same little girl, only this time she looked perfect. She was lying on a hospital bed, dressed in a white gown and covered with the thin silvery sheet. Her long black curly hair was shiny and clean, splaying out in a halo. Her soft skin was now glowing a rich, deep brown, and there were no sores anywhere that I could see, and her beautiful little face looked so peaceful. She looked so healthy now she had put weight on. "Wow," I said aloud. All the angels smiled at me. They all looked so utterly pleased with themselves, and I wondered if it was because of what they had done or my response to it. Either way, they obviously cared about us and our planet. I quickly felt humbled to be in their presence. "As you can see, Alita, we have healed all your people," Jackie said warmly. The image changed to the little girl again, who was now in a large room with many other children and adults. All were dressed in white smocks and trousers or white dresses. They were sitting in a huge semicircle surrounded by two angels who were obviously talking to them. Neither the children or the adults seemed afraid. They all looked the picture of health. "Once they are healed, we introduce ourselves. We explain to your people why we are here, Alita," Christique stated. "We then transported them to our holding structures where your people could develop and build new communities." Sorry, I had a hair in my mouth. "They help each other heal from all the trauma and loss that they have been through." Again, the image changed before us, showing the inside of a holding structure with happy, healthy people. They were talking, laughing, and were so relaxed it made my heart happy to see them. "If I've been asleep for 5 years," I started to say, but suddenly there was a sound of a huge explosion some distance away. The whole room shook from the force of it. It was so loud that I thought the glass doors to the meeting room were going to shatter into pieces. It was truly terrifying, and all 5 of my hosts jumped up from their seats. The image before us instantly disappeared. I quickly followed as the angels moved hurriedly to the massive control room that I'd seen when we entered. There were alarming noises and flashing lights in all directions. I could feel the panic in the room and the fear of the angels were feeling. As I looked out of the massive glistening window and into the distance, I watched in horror as another explosion erupted from one of the rig-shaped crafts out to sea. It was already an inferno. Flames were engulfing the craft in a blaze of red, orange, green smoke that billowed into the clear blue sky. The look of horror and sadness on the angels' faces that surrounded me told me that there were angels on that rig craft. I could feel the despair in the air. It was so strong. I stood frozen to the spot, wanting to help in some way, but knowing there was nothing that I could do. It felt like slow motion as the angels moved around me, giving urgent commands in their own language. Then, swiftly, every one of the angels moved in front of the massive shimmering windows. Rows and rows of them, all facing outwards towards the fiery scene. One by one, they raised their arms with their palms facing in the direction of the ocean and the burning rig craft. Their palms began to glow a bright white, and as my eyes diverted to the burning inferno, I wasn't quite sure I believed what I was seeing. Flashes of bright white light shot out of the tall flames almost like fireworks. They travelled up into the air and then arced. Their speed slowed rapidly as they began to fall to the sea about a mile from the rig craft. As they made contact with the water, The bright white light instantly changed into a solid form. Angels. They were angels from the rig craft. The water around the rig was starting to move in a circular motion, slowly at first, but getting faster with each second, forming a whirlpool. Faster and faster the seawater moved, and then it began to move upwards. Gradually, it started swallowing the rig, encasing it, until all I could see was a dome of moving seawater. Steam rose up from the water dome in huge tendrils, rising high into the air. In the distance, something else was happening in the sky above. I could see small spacecrafts quickly flying to the scene. Beams of light pulsed down from the crafts to each of the angels who were floating motionless on the water's surface. My mind was taking in the sight as the bodies of the angels were pulled by the light beams and into the craft. The dome of water surrounding the destroyed rig craft started to gradually lower, and the amount of steam rising from it was becoming less and less. The rig craft was black as it began to appear. Once the water slowed and receded back into the ocean, all the angels in the control room lowered their arms. As they began to turn in my direction, I saw many angels with glistening silvery tears streaming down their faces. The sheer sadness I felt in the room was echoed in those beautiful faces. Wiping away the tears from their cheeks, all the angels started to make their way back to their control areas. I looked around for my hosts, and I saw Christique talking with her colleagues, all looking very sombre. I didn't quite know what to do with myself, so I just waited patiently for them. After a few moments, all 5 of them approached me. Excuse me. I could tell they were trying to handle their emotions, just like I was trying to get a grip of my own. "Will your angels be okay?" I asked Harrick. I was choking back the tears that threatened to overwhelm me. I'm sorry, I've got to have a sip of my drink because I'm so congested. And literally my throat is drier than Gandhi's flip-flop right now. Sorry. I felt a strong bond with the angels already, and their pain felt like it was my own. "Do not worry, Alita. As we told you, we cannot die. We are hurting because we feel their pain and their suffering," he said. I couldn't imagine feeling all the pain of the angels that were burned in the explosion. It hurt my heart just thinking about how much agony they must be enduring. Christique turned to me and smiled warmly. "Come," she said. "We will finish our talk with you." And with that, they all began to glide back towards the room we'd left moments before. When we entered the meeting room again and sat in the comfortable chairs... Sorry, I'll reread that because that sounded off. We entered the meeting room again and sat in the comfortable chairs. Just as my backside touched the seat, another angel entered with drinks on a stone tray hovering between his hands. As he placed it on the table between us, I was suddenly aware of how dry my mouth was. I know that feeling. I wondered if it was the shock setting in from all the extreme emotions we'd just been through. I gratefully took one of the drinks, and as my hand cupped the container, the male angel placed his hand on mine. I felt the stress and negative emotions instantly ebb away. "Thank you," I told him with all my heart. I think he must have felt my utter gratitude flow from our touch, because when our eyes met, I could tell just how much my gratitude meant to him. When he left the room, I took stock of my emotions and realised how much better I felt, back in control of my emotions and not feeling so shaken. Not only because of what the angel had done, but also because of Christique's reminder that the angels on the rig craft couldn't die. After finishing my drink, I placed my cup back on the table in front of us like everyone else. Looking up at my hosts, it was as if they were aware of the emotional roller coaster I'd been on. I could feel their love and compassion for me, and I could see it in their sapphire blue eyes as they looked at me. "Are you ready to begin again?" Livik asked. "Yes, I am," I replied, trying to sound as calm as they were. She raised her palm again, and the image reappeared in the centre of the table. The image was the same as before. It showed the many different spacecraft, but this time when they all started to move to their different directions, the image stayed with one of the rig structures, and Christique began to explain. "While some of our angels were saving your people, other angels were trying to save your earth," she stated. I watched the image change before me. It showed a rig craft structure landing softly in the ocean. The water thick, brown and covered in oil slicks. I'm just going to reread that. I watched the image change before me. It showed a rig craft structure landing softly in the ocean, the water thick, brown and covered in oil slicks. As the bottom of the craft touched the water, there was a glimmer of ice white and silver. The craft began to steadily rise, and as it rose from the water, mechanical-looking legs started to appear from underneath it, and they lowered into the water. Minutes later, the spacecraft looked exactly the same as the futuristic rigs that I'd seen out of the window in my room and the control room. The image changed again, and I assumed that this time I was seeing the inside of the craft. When the images changed, Jackie began to explain what I was being shown. "With the craft that you see here, and the others like it," she said, "we clean your oceans, trivets, and your underground aquifers. By the time we arrived, all your water was poisonous to humans and animals. The most desperate animals and humans who had run out of clean water supplies were trying to drink from the rivers and streams. So we had to act quickly," Jackie added. I watched the image, totally amazed at what I was seeing. There were angels monitoring futuristic machinery, busy moving dials and activating various buttons with their power. The machines were sucking up the bad water through one side of the rig craft, and clean, pure water was flowing out the other side. What truly amazed me was that the fresh, clean water wasn't mixing back with the bad. It looked like the same chemical reaction as oil and water. There was a white glow around the massive inlet pipe and around the outlet pipe of the rig craft, which was just as large. So I knew that they were using their power to suck the water up and pump it back out. "Not only are we cleaning your water, but we are also healing your earth," Harrick said, his voice full of pride. Then the image changed to show many half-circle spacecrafts. They were landing in various wild areas such as jungles and great forests, prairie lands and fields. My eyes were glued to the images before me. It was fascinating. As one landed in a wild prairie, the bottom of the craft started to glow just like the rig craft had. I was in awe as silver, vine-looking veins started to appear at the base of the craft. One singular vein became two, then two became four. The further out the vines spread, the more they split. It was just amazing to watch, as not only did they spread outwards, but smaller vines were appearing and entering the ground all around the craft. The earth closest to the spacecraft began to change colour before my eyes. Instead of tinned dry brush and pale dry dirt, it was changing slowly to moist earth and lush vegetation. Relief flowed through me as I witnessed the amazing work the angels were accomplishing with their knowledge and power. I was humbled by their unselfish compassion for us humans and our planet. "There is more to show you, Elita. However, I am needed elsewhere," Christique said. "Zanika will take you to your room to rest and eat for now." Christique rose out of the chair and we all followed suit. "We will talk some more soon," she said. She smiled as she and the other angels glided out of the room, leaving just the two of us. I was speechless. My mind was so full of all that I'd been shown. Come, Alita. I think you are weary. I will take you to your room now, Zenika said, smiling her beautiful smile. There we go. So that's where the action is all happening now. I bet you're wondering, you know, what happened to the rig craft, you know, who sabotaged it. Yeah, it's all action packed from now on, and you got a little taste of the angels magic. So again, please share videos for chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, and this one for chapter 4. Keep sharing, keep inviting your friends to check out my book. Here in the US, it's coming up to Mother's Day, so if you want to buy your mum a copy of the Earth Angels paperback as a gift, make sure you order it in plenty of time because they have to be printed. The nice thing is that because there's two versions, the adult version and the young adult version, you can buy your mum either, depending on how open-minded she is. The young adult version is the exact same story, it just doesn't have the adult scenes and the adult language. So, as I said, it's perfect either way. And the young adult version doesn't say young adult version on the cover, so that, you know, your mum is not going to get offended or anything. It's only the adult version that has it written on there. This is the young adult version I'm reading from. So please keep up with the sharing. All of you that have actually read Earth Angels already, please write me a review on Amazon and Goodreads, because it really helps. And massive thank you to those who already have. I'm so appreciative, and I will speak to you soon. I'm going to try and do a Q&A, a live Q&A, because I keep getting all these questions messaged to me, so hopefully I'll do that live soon, maybe even tomorrow. So keep a lookout and share. Thank you. Bye.